Hello, one and all, to the live video that'll come before today's TDR episode. Thank you for joining me online for the news. We are practicing social distancing. Don't come near me, and I won't come near you. But we have news, and what do you know? It's about coronavirus because that's the only thing that's in the news today. But the thing is, it doesn't just come in one form, that news. Some sources are just spreading accurate information about the count, which is apparently above 1,700 now here in the US, and others still today spreading misinformation that hypothetically could get people infected or even killed. And so we're going to update you a bit on some of that misinformation. What do you know? Fox News is doing it. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going? And so last night, Martha McCollum had Ari Fleischer on, and Ari Fleischer was talking about no, I'm in an okay mood, considering that the world's falling apart. Ari Fleischer was talking about Trump's address in the Oval Office that we've broken down on the show. And among other things said, the manner in which the president read that speech, it appeared to me, Martha, as if he had barely seen it before he read it off the teleprompter. And that was reflected in the lack of emotion, the lack of connection as he read that important speech. So I think the president fell short of that mark last night. Now, Ari Fleischer had good things to say about Trump as well, but made that criticism. And Martha McCollum, straight news person, supposedly, on Fox says, yeah, as far as the president's speech, obviously it sounds like you're citing maybe a failure among, I don't know, the speechwriter or making sure it was run through several times before they went in there. This is only the second time he has done an Oval Office speech like that, and it is a unique sort of presentation, and it demands attention, right? So this is like the straight news person. It was an obviously widely panned, both in terms of like if this is about presentation optics, reassuring the nation, horrendous in that respect. He can't express any empathy. Like the okay at the end obviously undercut it. But in terms of the substance, too, she has to be aware of the fact that multiple claims that he made in that speech turned out not to be true. They were walked back by the White House afterward. We found out that in the speech, the actual script of the speech, which the draft was available, it said that trade is going to be like he added words to give the exact opposite impression about whether the embargo with Europe would include trade goods. He just added it in, either because he doesn't wear glasses and he couldn't see the teleprompter. That's a known story, that he refused to wear glasses because he doesn't want to look weak, but he needs it because he can't read. That's why he writes his notes in Sharpie. So yeah, exactly. So Stephen Miller and apparently Jared also were involved in writing the speech, but he didn't even care about what was actually in it to know it. And that is why he was just inserting words and giving people the exact opposite idea of what the newly announced regulations would actually encompass. And that's information that people need to know. But Fox's job is to protect the president. And so they give people the idea that it's the speechwriter's fault. No, the speech had, well, at least in that respect, had accurate information. He just didn't read it correctly. But anyway, that was last night. It obviously gets far worse this morning when Fox and Friends comes on. So we got a few different things. One, in the nature of always looking on the bright side of life, Ainsley Earhart this morning said, it's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead, ghost towns, and then the planes. Remember back in the day when you had next to you a seat, possibly empty, you could stretch out a little more? It's like that on every flight now. And Steve Ducey responded, what do you mean? My wife was on a flight last Thursday and every seat was taken. Well, look, obviously it depends on where you go, but like she was confusing even the other people on Fox and Friends. So, look, are there less people flying? Yes, supposedly on a lot of flights there are less people. That doesn't mean it's the safest time to fly necessarily. I mean, the CDC has put out a travel advisory for people to not fly unless they need to. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's been making the rounds a lot in media, obviously says, I certainly wouldn't get on a plane for a pleasure trip. If it was just for fun, no way would I do it. And so, yes, hypothetically, there are less people, but you are still exposing yourself to people internationally that might have been exposed to it. So, they trust Ainsley Earhart. I know it's insane, but they do. Millions of people watch Ainsley Earhart every day, and she's just like it's the Today Show, like anecdotally, like, hey, isn't it cool that there's not a lot of people at the Sbarro at LAX or whatever? But that doesn't override the travel advisory of the experts who are trying to keep people safe. So maybe be a little bit more careful. Anyway, if you haven't already hit the like button, we got 2 more little excerpts from Fox and Friends, which I will give you, but you have to hit that like button. So that was Ainsley Earhart and Steve Doocy being, to some extent, the voice of reason. The person who was very much not the voice of reason was Geraldo Rivera. So Geraldo Rivera has a tweet going around about that you can like drastically lower the chance of getting coronavirus by keeping your mouth moist by drinking every 15 minutes or something like that, which is like not hypothetically 100% wrong, but like the idea that that is the thing that's going to save you. He tweeted at it, and like all these boomers are like, thank you for this, I feel safe now. Okay, look, keep your mouth moist. I mean, you don't want to be dehydrated, I guess. I don't think that's necessarily the most important thing, but even that seems like very good medically sound information in comparison to this, which he said this morning. If you can't hold your breath for 10 seconds, everyone should do that. Hold your breath for 10 seconds. If you can hold your breath for 10 seconds, then you don't have this disease. No, that's not true. That's just not true at all. That's a thing that people have said, like not doctor people. The doctor people don't say that because it's not true. It's been debunked. It's like a hoax that spread through social media. And Geraldo, who is by far not the worst person on Fox News, apparently, like a lot of boomers, goes on Twitter, sees something, and is like, oh, that's definitely true, 100%. Geraldo MD, someone tweeted, yes. So if you can hold on. I've got it. No, that's not true. And like, there are going to be some people who will have watched that. Again, millions of people watch this show, and they will do that test at home. You know, people were watching the show and holding their breath, and then if they made it to 10 seconds, would think, well, I guess I'm clear. But that's not a substitute for actually being tested for the virus if you believe that you have it. But even that isn't the worst. So they also had Jerry Falwell Jr. on, because at a time of, mass panic over the spread of a disease, you want to have a grifter like Jerry Falwell Jr. on. So he said, H1N1 killed a bunch of people back in 2009, and we didn't panic as much about it then, although we totally did panic, perhaps not to the same extent. I don't think it had the international spread that this has had. But anyway, he says the reason for that, it's, impeachment didn't work, and the Mueller report didn't work, and Article 25 didn't work. I don't even know what he thinks happened with Article 25. And so maybe now this is their next attempt to get Trump. So this was this morning, March 13th, right? We're at over 1,700 cases. There's a possibility that far more people have it, but haven't been tested for it. Dozens of people have died. And he is on Fox and Friends this morning still saying effectively, concern about this is an impeachment hoax. It's Russia, Russia, Russia. It is made up and fake. And so tons of people who watch Fox News, and by the way, like if you were to try to come up with the people most at risk of dying from this disease, it would be your average Fox viewer. They have just been reassured that the panic that they're seeing is needless. It is a political tool to get Donald Trump. So again, making them more likely not to listen to the appropriate and accurate medical advice that they're receiving. But then he says this, even worse. But I had the owner of a restaurant asked me last night, he said, do you remember the North Korean leader promised a Christmas present for America back in December? Could it be they got together with China and this is that present? I don't know, but it really is something strange going on. So they had Jerry Falwell Jr., doctor and international man of mystery who has sources embedded in countries around the world, and to come on and say that a restaurant owner believes that the North Koreans and China wanted to hurt America, so they unleashed a virus on their own people, killing thousands, with the hopes that it would eventually get to the U.S. and spread here, rather than just hypothetically spreading it here, if this was actually a tool that they cooked up. But like, he's not saying anything. He's just saying maybe this is a conspiracy theory involving the North Koreans and China to kill their own people with the hopes to roll the dice and kill some of ours. Thank you, Darcel Scott. That's very nice of you. And they had him on. And here's the thing. It's one thing to have him on to say this. It's another thing for the next thing they say on the show. This is Steve Doocy. So Jerry Falwell Jr. says, but it really is something strange going on. And Steve Doocy says, well, Jerry, so regarding the fact that you're going to continue to have classes, and I would imagine that dorm life is going to remain as it is as well, is a component of that the fact that it seems to be that people in their late 20s and teens are less affected by this than people who are over 60? So Falwell just said, this is a hoax, and by the way, if it's real, which I don't appear to think it is, it's one cooked up by the North Koreans in China. And Steve Doocy said, noted, let's move on to my next question about dorm life. Because they bring these people on who are irresponsible, who are going to get more people infected and possibly killed, and then they don't even do, like, you can't even call it fact-checking to say, well, I think that guy who owns a restaurant might be wrong about this international conspiracy to unleash a bioweapon on the U.S. They couldn't even say that. That's 9 hours on Fox News we just spanned, the amount of misinformation that they're spreading. Still, it's March 13th. And they're still trying to do whatever they can to make it more likely that their own viewers aren't ready for this thing. And by the way, to give an idea of how insidious this is, you remember, like, you know, how Trump says that climate change is a hoax, but they're, like, making changes at his Scotland resort to prepare for rising sea levels, like proving that he actually knows that it exists. He's just not going to do anything about it. All these Fox hosts are coming on and telling people, it's a hoax, or they're making too much of it, or maybe it's just the Wuhan virus. Let's focus on the fact that it's Chinese. Fox is changing a bunch of their rules for the short term to make it less likely that coronavirus spreads inside of Fox News. So certain types of people are going to be working from home. These, by the way, are incredibly reasonable changes to make. But if you're going to do that and acknowledge the threat posed by coronavirus, maybe don't then send those hosts that you've helped to protect onto the airlines to tell people, or on the airwaves, to tell people that they don't have to worry about this, that it's all made up, it's just a political ploy, it's a plot to take down Trump. Like, think about that. They're protecting their own while increasing the chance that their audience gets the virus. How underhanded is that? Okay, anyway, we've got less than 10 minutes. Brett is going to be joining me, and you should be excited for that for two reasons. So we got two segments we're going to be doing today. One is the Garbage People of the Week. We've each chosen a garbage person. I've got one that might be tied into this subject that we just talked about. And also, we've got another top 10 list. So today, I understand this is a little bit more depressing on top of the previous depressing, but top 10 reasons Trump might whoop Biden if he is the nominee. So we're going to break down some of our main fears for what Biden would represent if he ends up getting the Democratic nomination. Some of the reasons that general election could be a lot rougher than many in the Democratic establishment seem to think that it will be. So we're going to be talking about that and more. Expect Brett in less than 8 minutes. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you then.